way to save the season to throw. Fire down! Incomplete down at the goal line by San Diego. Tomlinson off the left side. Tomlinson sidestep. Hello, history books. They have to now. Here's Sproles. Sproles inside the 10, inside the 5, and the Chargers win the game.
What's up, good people? Welcome to After Hours later here on a Tuesday night, recording After Hours a couple days later. Appreciate you guys joining us. I know you guys have probably been in the chat for the last 48 hours. We're here. Thanks for sticking with us. Craig's here. Jamie's here. The three of us are back. And so Chargers get the win on Sunday. They beat the Broncos 23-16 in Mile High. I just kind of want to get you guys' first overall feelings about the game plan and everything, because it felt like the Chargers jumped on them early. They jumped out to a 23-0 lead, and then Broncos kind of started scoring late in garbage time, and then got pretty kind of close at the end. But how'd you guys feel early on, or at least since we got to rewatch it a couple times now? What are you guys' thoughts now that you got to go and rewatch that game?
I liked a lot of what they did. I thought watching it live and watching it back tonight, I felt like they were aggressive early in the game offensively. They took some shots down the field. They had some really well-designed plays to get the ball down the field. The wheel route to Kamani Vidal was beautiful. It was so well designed and well thrown, just perfectly executed. They went out of their way to get the ball into QJ's hands and McConkey's hands early through manufactured touches and throwing the ball in that intermediate area. We saw some signs of Herbert kind of coming out of his early season struggles, making some throws in the middle of the field he wasn't necessarily trusting or making early in the season. It looks like he's feeling better and starting to trust people and know people are going to be where they're supposed to be. What?
I just spilled beer on me. And
you were laughing at me.
Nope. I'm already spilling beer on myself.
So you get some really good offensive play. They ran the ball really well. They used misdirection. They used counteraction. They used the jet sweeps to get the ball in Davis's hands. So a lot of good things on offense. There were some bad things too, both early and late in the game that we can get to. But the offense looked good. They had a lot of long drives. They possessed the ball for a long time. All good things, all positive things. And the defense, for the most part, shut the Broncos down until late when they started playing back and getting conservative, at least in the back end. They were still conservative up front, but they were still aggressive up front, I should say, but they got a little bit more conservative in the back end and gave up some plays.
Yeah, overall, really like the way they came out offensively firing, letting Herbert sling it. I think 10 of the first 11 plays were passes. Did not expect that coming out of the gate. But again, I mean, you have Justin Herbert at quarterback, so you have to unleash him at some point. And then, the interior offensive line is a bit of a problem. So you definitely want to give defenses something to think about. So then you can kind of levy the run a little bit more, so it'll be more effective. Jamie mentioned it. They were doing a lot of misdirection, which I think softened up the interior of the defense because the Broncos had to respect the edges, and so they couldn't necessarily load up the box and attack just some of the downhill power running game. They had to respect what was happening on the outside, so it just gave them something extra to think about offensively, at least for the first half. It was awesome, but it shows that the time was spent really well there in the bye week, designing some additional plays, not just going with what was scripted and running out after the first 10 or 15 plays. Roman definitely had a plan, and allowing Herbert to do his thing kind of settled the offense in a bit. Defensively, I don't know what else there is to say. I mean, you had a lot of young guys who stepped up. I mean, in the fourth quarter, I think one of the things that happened is after Christian Fulton went out, you then had, your two rookies on the outside. Tarheeb Still's not an outside corner, even though he played a little bit at Maryland, and that showed up later in the game. They weren't as aggressive, but I think there were some defensive lapses in the secondary, mainly on Still's part, even though I think he played a tremendous game, especially in the slot. He definitely showed up there. But the Chargers always have to make it interesting, man. You know how it goes. It can never just be dominant all the way through. They have to make us, clutch our pearls every once in a while there towards the end of games. But overall, I was pretty happy with the game plan. I just want to see them play a consistent 4 quarters of football, put it all together, and do it, again, consistently. So I was mainly happy with what I saw. I tried not to be super nitpicky, but there are things that we can talk about, and I'm sure that we will.
Yeah, to go the whole first half, scoring on every single drive outside of the kneel down at the end of half. Yeah, and then punting at the beginning of the second half, you kind of got, at least I did, the idea pretty early on that we're going to get another second half like they've put up in the last couple of weeks. But it was, once you jump out to a 23-0 lead, felt like they kind of like loosened the reins a little bit on this defense. But for me, I think what really kind of, it was almost like Harbaugh's stamp on this game, or the exact like replica of what Harbaugh wanted to do when he came in here, was that drive in the second quarter where they went 20 plays, 76 yards. It ended on a field goal, but they ate up 10 minutes and 29 seconds on a single drive, which is exactly what they wanted to do. And, part of the, something we've been talking about all off season, if the Chargers aren't going to be competing with this, race car teams who've got, speedsters and track stars on the offense, the best way to combat that is to keep the ball, eat the clock, and make sure they don't get the ball back. And if you keep the ball for over almost 10 minutes and 30 seconds, that's a pretty good recipe. You'd like to come away with a touchdown, but that felt like exactly what Harbaugh came here to do, and he was able to do it. It came in week 6, but this is the vintage way Harbaugh wanted to run the ball, keep the clock ticking, and just possess it and grind down first down after first down after first down. And that was actually the first time the Chargers have had a drive lasting over 19 plays since 2001. So it's been a long time since they've been able to do that. And the fact that they were able to score in every drive in the first half was pretty impressive as well. So in terms of a game plan standpoint, I mean, it felt like in the first half, at the very least, it felt like, I agree with Craig. I think there were a couple mistakes late in that game, but I also feel like they kind of sat back and gave a little bit more of a cushion to Bo Nix, and we saw him, rush a couple more times, and they were kind of they weren't good at containing Bo Nix as they were the first half, and the missed tackling was a problem late in that game too. But it just felt like the game plan from an offensive standpoint worked perfectly, especially through the first half, and defensively it was great too, because we saw Bo Nix at times was contained. They did that same wall like they did with Mahomes, and he sat back, scrambled, and there was nothing open downfield. They did a great job of being able to hang with receivers for 6, 7, 8 seconds while Bo Nix is in the pocket. So just defensively and offensively, I thought it was a pretty crisp game. I know that, we don't want the score to be as close as it was in the end, but again, like Craig was mentioning, you got some rookies in their first starts ever. I think they bode pretty well in their first game action.
Even with the way the second half went, I don't think the score should have been as close as it was. I mean,
yeah.
I still don't think that Cortland Sutton touchdown
was a touchdown.
Yeah, it absolutely was not.
The nose of the ball hit the ground as he came down out of bounds, and you could see him trap the ball against his body and use the ground to control it. That was not a catch.
Yeah, he never possessed it before he physically hit the ground. He was still trying to gather it. That's why I was confused. I'm like, what is the discussion here to be had? Like, you have to have possession of the ball at some point during the actual play.
And you have two officials who were nowhere near the football.
Yeah.
Calling it a touchdown, coming and conferring, calling it a touchdown when they couldn't see what happened.
Which is fine, but once the booth approves it, that was crazy.
Well, in my opinion, the call on the field should have been incomplete. And then if they want to review it. But because of the way the rule works, if you're calling that a touchdown, you're going to make it really difficult to overturn it.
So now they're like kind of erring on the side of caution with these plays. If it looks like a touchdown, they basically call it a touchdown on the field, and you have to make them wrong. And if it's not like clear and evident, which to me via the replay it was, they're essentially just going to allow it to stand. So it used to be they didn't really, it seems like the refs are basically trying to hedge. They'll go with what it looks like on the field, and you're going to have to be like super convincing to have them overturn the play just so it doesn't look bad on their part. But I don't know how being able to review it, seeing that it clearly wasn't, and sticking with what your call helps your cause either. I mean, either way, you're questionable.
Yeah, and then the first touchdown was equally as bad because Mac got choked out on the edge. That was a clear holding call.
Yeah, the rock bottom.
Yeah, that was ridiculous. But it is what it is. They got the win. They went on the road. They made the plays they needed to make. They got the win, so it worked out. But overall, it seemed like they unleashed Herbert a little bit. They made an effort to get McConkey and QJ involved. They got Palmer involved a little bit. They were doing, they were running a lot of crossers, running a lot of condensed and stacked type formations, trying to create space for guys to get open in the middle of the field. And a lot of that worked at times. And we saw Herbert, like I say, he was a little bit more aggressive with the football than he was the first few weeks of the season, fitting the ball in the tighter windows. Most of those windows created by a lack of spacing in the offense, which I'm sure we're going to get to here before too long, but he was fitting the ball into tighter windows, and he has been earlier in the season. So some progress in the offense, which is good to see, some aggressiveness. I think all of their possessions in the first half were more than 10 plays. So they were dragging out plays, picking up first downs, and chewing up yardage and clock, which, like Garrett said, is exactly what they want to do. That's how they want to win football games, and they did it.
Yeah, there's a 9-play drive, a 6-play drive, a 20-play drive, an 11-play drive, and then a 1-play drive to nail it down. But all points, all had 20-0 up until half. How do you guys? So, do you think? And I guess this is all hindsight, but do you guys believe that Patrick Surtain went down early in that game? Do you think that had anything to do with letting Herbert just sling it over the yard? It did feel like he felt a lot more comfortable than he has all season, with the injuries and everything else. But do you think having Surtain, their best corner and best defender, period, go down with an injury? Do you think that helped them kind of ease Herbert along a little bit easier?
I think the game plan was the game plan regardless. What I will say is it may have made things a little bit more difficult, but also keep this in mind. Herbert had 9 different targets that he got the ball to. So it's not like, P2 can be all over the field everywhere at the same time. I mean, he may have cut down on some of those completions, and it looked like, I'm not sure, the play that he was defending McConkey and got hurt on, was that from the slot?
I don't
Does
remember.
anybody remember? Because I found that interesting. Like, I don't know if it was against zone or if they were playing man-to-man, because they are a heavy man-to-man team, and McConkey typically operates out of the slot. So I was curious as to whether or not they were going to have him follow McConkey around, because clearly the Chargers have identified Ladd as being their primary target, or Herbert has seemed to build that rapport. So it looks like it may have been a player they were looking to take out of the game and maybe forcing Herbert to dish the ball elsewhere. But Herbert was just delivering it to whomever was open. I mean, Ladd got his fair share of targets, but overall, I do think, him missing the game or being hurt early absolutely affected things defensively, and it allowed the windows to be a lot more open. There were more opportunities, but I think the game plan was going to be that regardless whether or not he was in or not.
Yeah, I think the Broncos were really making an effort to take Ladd away. I saw a handful of times where he was double teamed, bracketed. So they were putting a lot of focus on him in the slot and outside. So clear focus on taking him away and making Herbert find somebody else to catch the football.
Yeah, but still getting a ton of tackles, or a ton of attempts, excuse me. We got 7 and we talked, I think we talked about it. I don't think, Jamie, you were on that podcast, but every time Ladd McConkey got 7 or more targets, the Chargers have won. He got 8 on Sunday, and the trend continues. So that to me is no coincidence, and you just keep feeding the man and good things will happen. It was a good game from Ladd McConkey, and we're talking about spreading it around too, but I really do like offensively them spreading it sideline to sideline with Darius Davis on those jet sweeps. We saw 3 of them. 2 of them went for first downs. I know QJ got one for like a couple of yards, but being able to use your speedster sideline to sideline, getting outside and turning a corner was a real nice wrinkle they added. And then they even try to get him with a deep shot. So kind of like, he's not just the guy we're going to hand it off to. You got to account for him downfield too. So you love to see that kind of role for Darius Davis.
Yeah, on the walkthrough, I talked a lot about what I wanted them to do on offense, and that the points that I hit were really doing a lot of misdirection and a lot of counteraction in the running game to pull the Broncos, basically test their eye discipline and make them run sideline to sideline and then cut it back against the grain, which they did a lot of. I wanted them to do some jet sweeps, which they did a lot of. Talked about throwing it a lot on first and second down, which they did a lot of. So, you appreciate the game plan because it wasn't. We're used to cookie cutter game plans. This is what we do. This is how we're going to do it. Make them stop us. Well, it's been getting stopped. So it was a very opponent specific game plan. They executed it really well in the first half. And I think they just made the decision to sit on the lead because they didn't think Bo Nix could beat them in the second half. I don't think it was so much about the Broncos stopping them as it was about the Chargers just being comfortable with the lead and not feeling like the Broncos were going to be able to catch them in the second half.
Mm.
Oh, agreed. Sorry. I was supposed to be jumping in there. So no.
Oh, you took a deep breath. We were all like, oh, here he goes.
No. I wasn't about to let loose. No, I'm right there with you. No, nothing to add on that one.
And what's going on with these Will Dissly screens? It feels like every time they do it, but somehow you go, he's not on the top of my list to get a screen to. And then somehow there's a Calvary in front of him and he gets like a 10 to 15 on Sunday. It was 20 yards. How do these keep working?
Nobody's expecting the non-playable character to catch the ball. Like sometimes I feel like everyone forgets he's on the field until he physically touches the football, and then everyone's in shock. It's like the dude's moving in slow motion. So anything that goes beyond 5 yards is always a shocker to me. But again, they were dialing up plays, getting the ball into players' hands that maybe they didn't expect. Like the Darius Davis vertical shot was something that I've literally been asking for I feel like since last year, because they've never used him in that fashion. I mean, he's another 4-3 guy that you can use to at least be a decoy and make the defense have to respect it. But overall, Will Dissly, if it works, it works. But man, it's ugly. It's just the worst. Like it looks like a blooper reel. Yeah. But again, you're using him to great effect. The fact that he's been more effective than Hayden Hurst is what's really scary. But again, it just lends to what I feel like they need to do before the trade line and attacking it and looking for another viable tight end option. But that's a different discussion. But good on Will for producing while he's in the game, being a good blocker and a receiving option, apparently.
If it kind of feels like when colleges bring on like the old guy to come play with the team during before the season starts, and then they just have the whole team run with them, or they give it to a little kid for a Make-A-Wish thing. It's like it's moving in so slow that it never feels like it should be happening. It
might have been like Al Bundy at Polk High. That might be exactly what.
Mm-hmm.
You'd think they designed those plays for Stone Smart if they want to get the ball into a tight end's hands. Somebody who can actually move a little bit.
I mean, outside of Scott Matlock, I don't know anybody else I would not want that ball to go to. But it happens and it works. But you know what we haven't talked about is the O-line. Chargers got Rashawn Slater back. They got Joe Alt back, and Herbert had a lot more time on Sunday.
I actually thought the line as a whole played pretty well for the most part. There were some busted plays. I thought Zion played one of his better games for the most part. There were a couple of mistakes, but he was really good in the running game. He was much better in pass protection. It seemed like having Slater next to him really helped out. But as a whole, outside of a couple busted plays where they got beat by a blitz, a lot of overload blitzes, it seemed like the Broncos were trying to attack the right side of the line, trying to really go after Salyer on a lot of third and long type situations. But the line played well. They ran the ball downhill at the Broncos, which a lot of people probably didn't think they'd be able to do based on the way they've run the ball the last couple of weeks. But they were able to open up holes, and they ran the ball extremely well in the first half in particular. And the pass protection, for the most part, was pretty good.
Yeah, O-line held up pretty well. Like Jamie mentioned, there's just this thing with Zion in high leverage situations on third downs where teams just seem to get the best of him, whether it's like these stunts or blitzes, overloads. He almost seems really slow-footed and just takes a long time to diagnose, but that's just the interior of the offensive line in general. You see on 3rd and 8+, which is where I absolutely hate the Chargers to be right now, because teams have a tendency to send the dogs. They know exactly where to attack, and it's almost always successful, even though the Chargers did convert at a very high level on 3rd down. But just to finish the game off, you saw it a couple of times. Herbert trying to, hold that ball an extra second to allow some of those routes to develop downfield, which is twofold. The offensive line can only hold up for so long, and the receivers have to create separation, and the whole spacing thing that they still haven't figured out. But I digress. I'd say for the most part, the offensive line had a pretty solid game, but they just have to clean up things on 3rd and long. They have to be able to hold it down and give Herbert just an extra tick or two to get the ball away.
Yeah, I was going to mention and give Zion his flowers today. He really had a great game overall. I mean, not perfect, but I feel like the best game he's had all season. Slater just looked remarkable, and Alt was very, very good. Bozeman was up and down all day, but for the most part, they control the line of scrimmage. I mean, they could run it whenever they felt like they needed to. They got a big run at the end of the game. You know, there was kind of a lull through the 3rd quarter, but then when they needed it late, and the Chargers need to eat some more clock, J.K. Dobbins pops outside and able to get a big run. J.K. Dobbins also having a really good day, really patient yesterday, really finding where to attack, running behind his blockers, kind of cutting in and out. Anytime it was 3rd and short, it felt like it was an automatic first. He knew where to go. He knew how to find the sticks and get there. He was really good. And we talked about Kamani Vidal, or Jamie did, on the wheel route, which was great. Pretty good day for him outside of the kind of lunging, diving low on Nick Benito on that in pass pro, and it really didn't stop him, and they got a sack. Outside of that, pretty strong day for the rookie too.
Yeah, I think on that play in particular, though, I think Tomlinson was supposed to chip and missed.
And Vidal was trying to recover.
Yeah.
He was trying to recover that. So because you can see just from the position he was, like he tried to basically peel back, and the only way he was going to get there was to lunge out. So it looked really bad on his part, but I think he was just trying to make up for the missed block or chip on time.
Yeah, I think he got hung out to dry by Tomlinson, who, by the way, is going to get Herbert killed and needs to be the fuck off the field. That is my 2 cents on Eric Tomlinson.
Still cannot figure it out. It's got to be the last name, man.
He sucks and he needs to go. I guess 4 cents on Eric Tomlinson.
And so, I mean, while we're speaking on offense, and we're probably going to start to move on to defense here soon. Jamie, you were talking about spacing. You got a big issue with it?
A huge issue with it. They're putting Herbert in a situation where he's having to force the ball into impossibly tight windows because they're running 3 or 4 guys on crossers within 4 yards of each other, and the defenses are just bunching up in the middle of the field. There's just nowhere for guys to go. And there were a couple times where Herbert had to like squeeze balls in because there were defenders all over the football. There's just nowhere to throw the ball. Too many crossers, too many tight window crossers where you've got 3 or 4 guys running across each other's face, and the defense is just sitting back and watching. And it's all in a small area in the field. It's all basically between the hash marks. Sometimes it's between the numbers. A lot of slants, a lot of in-breaking routes. They're putting, even when they're getting the ball to McConkey in some cases, the spacing is bad. And then they're having him run too far across the field, and he's catching the ball headed towards the sideline and having a hard time turning upfield. I think they should have had a touchdown on. He had a red zone catch on a crosser. I think it was in the first quarter on maybe their first possession where he caught the ball and there was nobody within about 5 yards of him. But Herbert waited too long. Instead of hitting him in the middle of the field, he let him cross the hash and get closer to the numbers and threw it out in front of him. So he had to continue running the numbers before he cut it upfield. And he got he got stopped early and they had to settle for a field goal. But yeah, somebody please help Greg Roman with spacing. Maybe spread out a little bit more instead of so many condensed formations. Maybe back off of some of the crosser routes and the in-breaking routes, and give your guys some room to operate because you're putting them in a really tough spot, especially against teams that play so much man defense.
The other issue that you're facing there is you find yourself, and it almost happened again on Sunday, where when you're not getting the proper spacing and all those wide receivers are condensed in that same area and you've got all those defenders around, if a ball isn't caught, it's typically tipped up, it pops up in the air, and that's where you see a lot of these turnovers come into play because there's so many bodies in that one area. So, if guys don't get their hands on the ball and catch it clean and are able to make a play after the catch or just get down, you're liable to set yourself up for a turnover opportunity. So I don't know what this is with Roman. Sometimes it comes down to the wide receivers and their splits, but it's not just the wide receiver split thing. When you're running bunch formations, the splits don't really matter as much because you're supposed to be congested. It's the route combinations and the depth at which they're running the routes that are the problem. So it just looks like as far as the combinations are concerned, someone needs to get with them on that. I mean, Mark Trestman, hey, I think this is one of the reasons why you're there. Hopefully you can get some input there and help him out, because Herbert's going to have some undue turnovers just because of the problems with spacing. So they got to get that cleaned up.
And I think that's a lot of the reason why he's been holding onto the football and not letting it rip earlier in reps too, because it's just so congested that he's afraid it's going to get tipped and picked. In fact, on the play that I just mentioned about McConkey getting stopped before he got to the end zone on a crosser, if you go back and look at that play, they had Palmer and I think it was Hurst. It was either Hurst or Disley. Both cross. One crossed underneath McConkey, one crossed over the top of him. And they were both running slants from right to left, and there was no more than 3 yards separating them. Now, everybody followed McConkey, and there was nobody with them, so there was an opportunity to throw to one of those guys for a touchdown. But, I mean, you look at how far apart they are. They're like – it almost looked like – I think it was Palmer was covering Disley or Hunter or I knew I was going to do that. It almost looked like Palmer was covering
Hurst
coming across the field. That's how tight their split was.
Yeah, they've got to improve upon just basic levels concepts in the passing game. It just doesn't seem like there's a really good beat on these. And again, it comes down to play calling, but also, I don't know, man, this has been one of the knocks on Roman for years. It doesn't seem to have improved very much. So again, you're not putting your quarterback in the best position to deliver the ball. You're not giving guys the opportunity to make plays after they catch it. It's a reoccurring theme, and someone's going to have to help them clean it up. Otherwise, you're probably going to start seeing more turnovers than you would like to see from 10. And I mean, it's going to be hard to blame them. You can't account for all of those. You can make the best throws possible, but if the spacing's terrible, a few times there are going to be balls that get picked, and that's just kind of how it works. Got to fix it.
So just to kind of clean up offense, we haven't mentioned Semi Fehoko, who got some run on Sunday. He led the team in receiving yards, which was 44. Herbert really did spread it around. And most of that came on that 30-yard shot down the sideline. So pretty good day from Fehoko. We got a big shot from him on Sunday. But defensively, we talked about the rookies. How we kind of touched on a little bit. How did you guys feel as a whole? Tarheeb Still and Cam Hart played.
I thought they both did well. They both flashed a couple times. Still had a big pass breakup down the field. He got beat, recovered, and knocked the ball away. Hart had a really nice play on a run stop where he peeled off of a blocker and made a real physical tackle. They had him. I was surprised. With Fulton on the field, they had Hart basically shadowing Sutton in the first half. And he did well outside of, I think, one rep where Sutton fell where Hart fell.
Yeah, got called back.
Yeah.
I mean, it seemed like Hart was in Sutton's hip pocket pretty much all day long, playing really physical coverage. So both those guys can tackle. They both look pretty solid in coverage. I thought they both fared well. I mean, I'd love to see more still. I'd like to see him play so well that they don't need to put Taylor out there anymore.
That's what I was calling for at the beginning of the season. That was one of my predictions, is that he would take over that slot role by mid-season. And who knows at this point? I mean, Taylor's out injured, so maybe he could lose his spot due to injury. We'll see how it goes, but I really like the way that Still played the receiver's hands on that play. So he didn't necessarily get his head around, but I do think that if he had turned, he probably would have lost the ball and would have ended up being a big play. So he did an awesome job on the recovery, waiting until he saw Mims flash his hands, and he got his hands up there and broke that up. I mean, it was a difference-making play. And as far as Cam Hart's concerned, 0 targets, 0 catches given up. And that tackle in the open field was tremendous, being that was one of the things that we were concerned about there in the preseason. Looked like during camp, he didn't know how to do it at all. And he looked like a seasoned vet out there this week. And although the Broncos don't have the most potent passing game, Cortland Sutton is no small task to go out there and have to defend one-on-one. And dude looked like he'd been doing it for a couple years. So the fact that the Broncos or Knicks didn't even think to throw it his way or target him says a whole lot. So I of course want to see more Tarheeb still. And it looks like, just based off player development, which comes from having an awesome coaching staff, that Cam Hart might be looking like someone who's, as far as his play being on the rise for sure. But I didn't think he would show this early, but happy to see it nonetheless.
Yeah. That hit on that run stop was absolutely beautiful. Something you could hear through the TV. A real good stick. And the thing that I feel is a little bit underrated on the Tarheeb Still pass deflection is just how patient he was getting downfield and didn't panic. We watched Michael Davis in that same situation grab and drag down receivers when they get a step on him, or pull down on their arms or jump over their back, or basically just tackle them. Tarheeb Still did not get his head around, but did not get grabby, did not put his hands on anybody, didn't try to tackle anybody, just read the receiver. When he got his hands up first, knocked the ball away. And that, to me, speaks volumes for a guy that's having his first rep, which feels like his first start on the outside in a whole new kind of system that he's doing in the NFL. And, we know that he's more catered to be a slot corner. So have to kick outside and then make a play like that down the field was really, really impressive. So I just think that rep all the way through was while he got beat, the recovery and not being able to be patient enough and not panic when the ball's in the air was really, really impressive from a rookie.
Yeah, that was a really nice play. Most rookies, like you said, they'll panic, they'll get grabby, they'll pull arms down,
rookies,
drag guys down to the ground.
Michael Davis is a veteran. He was doing it last season.
But you get my point.
Yeah.
You get stuck out there on an island down the field. Most guys are going to grab. They're going to panic. Even veterans do it, like Michael Davis. So to see a guy who hasn't played that much this year, play the ball the way he did and prevent a big play was really impressive.
I think you feel a lot better about the future of the position also. I mean, even though right now it's slim pickings at corner with all of the attrition, but when you look at Cam, he's probably best suited to play boundary corner, which fits the style of this defense a little bit better than Asante Samuel Jr. I mean, he's in his last year of his deal. We don't know what's going to happen there. But you got Christian Fulton, who's playing some top 10 cornerback, even though he's hurt. You can see a path going into next year of how they'll fill out the cornerback position. But again, you got two young guys in there that are ready to roll right now. So you can't say enough about that. Yeah.
Jamie, you kind of touched on it a little bit, but man, we got to talk about this interior defensive line. We got, outside of Tito sitting on the ball late and getting that delay of game, the interior guys were excellent. Broncos could get nothing going in the run game. Tart was really good. He got the fumble recovery, a nice QB hit on a real sweet bull rush. We have Poona Ford with another monster game. Another guy who made a huge hit in the run game that you can hear through the TV. Morgan Fox got 2 QB hits and a sack. The Broncos didn't even get 50 yards rushing from their running backs. It was all Bo Nix and his scrambling that got them any movement on the ground. But in terms of the run game and those running backs, they got absolutely nothing going, and it's all because of those guys up front.
I want to make sure that penalty gets assessed to the proper person. That was on Alohi Gilman. They called it Tito, and I'm like, what the hell are we talking about? That was Gilman. So Gilman was laying on top of the ball carrier and took forever getting off of him. So when they called it on, they called it on a Tito. I'm looking around. I'm like, there's like 150-pound difference. How do we screw that up? But I don't know. I guess maybe he turned around and he saw Tito in the area somewhere, and that's why he ended up throwing the flag. But no, that was definitely on Alohi.
Okay, I just heard the number being called.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, the interior of the defensive line has been great all year. They've really done a good job of stopping the run for the most part, really outside of the Steelers game where they were on the field for what felt like 50 out of 60 minutes. The interior of the defensive line has played extremely well, which has allowed the linebackers to play really well. I think the whole front seven, particularly against the run, deserves a lot of credit this year. They've played as a unit and they've rallied to the football. They haven't missed tackles. They've snuffed out the run really well. My only concern is the edge play. I don't feel like they're getting to the quarterback a whole lot. They're having to blitz probably more than they want to, and that's not getting home either, which is opening up passing windows down the field. So they need to figure out a way to get to the quarterback more with their 4-man rushes. Mac needs to get going. They got to find a way to get Thule going, whether it's with stunts and twists or whatever. They're not generating enough pressure off the edge. Now, we'll see what it looks like next week and in future weeks, because that might have been the game plan to generate interior pressure and to be more disciplined on the edge. This week in particular, with Nix running the ball as well as he has in recent weeks. So we'll see what it looks like moving forward, but you'd like to see them win more one-on-ones up front and get to the quarterback more consistently and affect the quarterback more quickly than they have in recent weeks.
Interior defensive line did that thing again, man. Poona Ford right now has to be the MVP of the defensive line as far as I'm concerned. And I still think he doesn't get enough recognition for everything that he does specifically against the run, but he does muck things up in the passing game as well. Tier Tart forcing that fumble and recovering it was huge. But I agree with Jamie. One of my takeaways from the edge position is that I feel like they weren't effective enough this past Sunday. One of the things that I'm worried about going forward is that when they play against more athletic quarterbacks, as good as Mac is, even though he's 30 plus years old, and even Bud Dupree, who's always been a freak athlete, but he's a little bit older. These guys aren't as athletic as they once were. They weren't spring chickens, and athletic quarterbacks are able to kind of take a step in one direction or another, get them off of their center, off of, I guess, having them not be able to square those guys up, and they're able to get around them and create yardage that way. And it's a little concerning because it makes me wonder if moving forward, the Chargers, maybe down the line, maybe this coming off season, maybe need to address it with someone who's more athletic, even if they're just a situational pass rusher that can maybe even be a spy for a more athletic quarterback or someone who can run down one of those dudes. Right now, they're at a bit of deficiency there. It worries me a little bit when you consider what they have coming up next in Kyler Murray, because that's all that little jitterbug does all day long. And, they're dominant where it comes to your regulatory pocket quarterbacks. But when we're talking about dudes who can really move, it creates issues for them. So it was really discouraging to see all of the pressures that Khalil Mack generated without him actually registering a sack, because I'm not accustomed to that. Khalil normally gets home. And Bud, I mean, it even happened to Derwin twice. They were in situations where we could have shut down plays that could have been like key sacks to end drives that ended up being extended, that came or resulted in points at the end of the drives. And they just have to be able to complete those plays and get home. Right now, it's just not happening enough. And like Jamie mentioned, even the blitzing is not a consistent thing with the results that are coming from that as well. So I don't know, man. As the season wears on, it's only going to get tougher to pull that off. But hopefully Mentor's able to dial up some different blitzes, some other, I guess, create some other loopholes within the scheme to where they can get home, because right now it's just not happening consistently enough.
Yeah, I'm thinking this game plan is going to look a lot like the Chiefs' game plan, where they're kind of just going to wall off Murray and force him to throw the ball like they did Mahomes. But yeah, Dupree missing on 2 sacks, one of which could have been a safety.
Safety, yeah.
And then Derwin's 2 misses brings up a question here from Ivan. Thoughts on Derwin's performance? He seemed a little lackadaisical compared to last game. He played against Pittsburgh. Hopefully it's just a one-off. He did finish with 2 pass deflections at the line of scrimmage, which was great. He had a really, really nice tackle for a loss.
Yeah, open field tackle.
Jump off to Javonte Williams for a loss, which was real nice. But then we saw 2 missed tackles, one of which on a 4th down. He gave up the catch to Vele on that 4th and 2, where still had to follow behind and tackle him. And then he got caught watching Nix that gave up the touchdown. That was on the 4th down. And then he was in coverage on that Troy Franklin touchdown. Mm-hmm. So what are your guys' thoughts on Derwin's performance?
I think part of what we're seeing, at least in the pass rush situation where he's missing some of those sacks, is not so much being lackadaisical, but seeing a guy coming off of a suspension, maybe having some of those penalties in his head and trying to change how he's tackling.
Or the money.
Yeah. I mean,
he just had another baby, man. You gotta keep those name checks.
Oh yeah, man. Diapers are expensive.
But I mean, at some point, if you want to help your team and you want to be out there playing and you don't want to get suspended, you have to reconsider how you're playing the game. And I'm sure he's getting to some of these points where he's about to make a tackle. He might be pulling up a little bit, afraid of getting a penalty. I mean, I know he said he wasn't going to change how he played. He didn't think the tackle he made in the Pittsburgh game was dirty. But something's got to change because he's a target. So that's got to enter your head at some point. I'm sure it's been a talking point. I'm sure it's been a practicing point. So that stuff comes up. It happens. And sometimes guys just make you miss. It's the NFL. They're all professional athletes. So eventually somebody's going to make you miss. Somebody's going to make you look stupid at some point. It's part of the game.
Mhm.
I think he mentioned at the end of the game that Bo Nix's athleticism caught him off guard a little bit, which to me is wild when you consider the weeks of tape you have to watch it in action. But never mind. Yeah, I'm sure mentally there's something there. He's not able to play with that reckless abandon that he was known for, even that controlled violence that, he was able to exhibit in his early years because they're just waiting on it. Anything that looks like it's too hard of a hit, they're probably going to put into question, maybe penalized, and it's got to be in his head. But I don't think he played in a lackadaisical way. It's just hard to play free when you have that to consistently worry about, when you know that the league is looking at every little thing you do and they've made an example of you. It's just going to continue to happen. And if you do anything that looks like what they penalized you for before, then you know what the results of that are going to be. He doesn't want to miss any more games. He doesn't want to have to yield any more of these game checks. So I think it's a combination of all of it. But when you can't be who you are and you have to adjust your game to fit like the new norm, some guys are able to adapt. Others have a more difficult time with it.
Yes, and the further this suspension's in the rear view, the more you feel like he's going to play a little bit more free and easy. But yes, this is a guy who it cost him a lot of money, and also he got suspended for it. And they know the NFL is going to be looking out for him going forward as well. So anything else defensively you guys want to touch on? I mean, outside of, Elijah Molden had a pretty good game, had the interception. Anybody else you guys want to? Oh, the chat wants to talk about Denzel Perryman and that 2-point conversion stop.
Yeah.
That was a huge play. Honestly, I think the linebackers as a whole deserve some flowers. That's a group that we were very critical of heading into the season. We thought that might be one of the worst linebacker position groups in the NFL coming into the season, and they've played extremely well. Like I said, they're playing as a unit. They're rallying to the football. They're tackling as a team. There's always 2 or 3 guys around the football. They're physical. They're sure tacklers. Even Perriman seems like he's under control and he's not whiffing on tackles like he has in the past. They're reading plays. They're getting downhill and they're making tackles. Those linebackers have played phenomenally. And I think all 3 of them, Colson, Perriman, and Henley, all looked really good, basically from bell to bell on Sunday. They played outstanding football.
Yep.
One of the reasons why I think Denzel is playing with so much more confidence is he trusts who's playing next to him, because Deion Henley, I don't think, is getting enough attention either. The guy's always around the ball. That athleticism is showing up each and every week. When it comes to just stopping guys, even if he doesn't stop them cold, he absolutely breaks these plays up and allows other guys to get in and contribute. But I feel like Denzel has a very real trust in him to where he feels like he can take risks and he has someone that'll back him up in the event that he doesn't finish the play. So I think it all depends and it comes down to confidence in the people that you play next to. They play for one another, and that level of trust, can't be overstated. I think it's playing a huge role in Denzel's performance this year because, he's not playing like a grizzled vet, an old guy at all. He's still got that burst to him, still able to penetrate, shoot gaps, and get ball carriers for tackles for loss and make big plays in that way against the run. So kudos to Navarro Bowman because he's got that entire unit rolling.
Yeah, that 2-point that play on that 2-point conversion was the best version of Perryman we've seen. That seek and destroy type mentality to race through the gap and make that big of a hit before the goal line is just beautiful. And this whole linebacker group as a whole is not a position group you have to worry about at the second level at all. In the run game, missing tackles, none of it. They've all been very good. And I know people in the chat were talking about, at least on in our Discord, about Colson getting kind of punked a little bit by the hezzy move by Nix after that missed tackle from Derwin, but what can he do on that move?
And we got to talk about how big of a deal that 2-point conversion stop was, because we're playing a what if game. We know how the game ended, but that's the difference between it being an 8-point and a 10-point game. So they make that 2-point conversion, they get the ball back on an onside kick, they score. They still have the ability to tie the game, and we could be having a completely different conversation right now. So that play on that 2-point conversion, it has to get the props it deserves.
Well, I mean, if they would have got that 2-point conversion, then they wouldn't have. Well, then they wouldn't have kicked that field goal and they wouldn't have won it for a touchdown. But yeah, no, it's totally. It was a beautiful play and a great play by Perryman. All right, we got a bunch of questions here, guys. We're gonna get right to it. Our first one. I guess we can start here. It's from J. Alex Keith. Can someone shut down all the Mike Williams back to the Chargers discourse online? Mike was never a number one. He was so bad today, which was yesterday, that the Jets got Telesco to make an in-season trade.
I mean, the only argument for bringing Mike Williams back is that he and Herbert have chemistry together. But what good is that chemistry if the guy's concussed and he can't stay on the field? I mean, he's missed huge chunks of seasons the last 3 years for a variety of injuries, and he has not been productive playing with the Jets. I think a lot of people thought he'd go to the Jets, make a lot of big plays, be Aaron's 50-50 guy. He's running. If you listen to Rodgers, he's running the wrong routes. I don't necessarily think that was the
threw
case
him
last night.
Clean under the bus.
Yeah, threw him right under the bus, even though he underthrew him by about 5 yards.
Yeah, that's.
And he was making a no-look pass 40 yards down the field. Who the fuck do you think you are at 41 years old?
It's never Aaron's fault.
Yeah. He just got his head coach fired. Yeah, and it's not his fault.
No.
Yeah, it's not his
He's
fault.
got nothing to do with any of this.
No, but look, Mike is not healthy and not very good right now. So do they need help at wide receiver? Yeah, you could make an argument that they do. I think their guys are going to start making plays, and I think they're going to open things up for them. They've been showing signs of it for the last few weeks. If not for injuries to the offensive line and to Herbert, I think the numbers would look a lot different. So I'm not too worried about the wide receivers. I think they'd be better off focusing on a tight end personally. And I think that will help the wide receivers. So no, I'm not interested in Mike. I hate the idea that we go back to the well just because a guy's a former Charger. There's a reason they let him go, guys. And he's kind of living down to those expectations at this point. So it's time to move on.
Yo, the fact that Telesco didn't get him back in this trade should tell you all you need to know about what's going on with Mike. Because to me, that was like, that'd be a wet dream of Telesco to make that happen again. Just get part of the gang back together. You know how he does. Mike's one of his guys, so for sure he would have loved to have him. Or you would think he would have loved to have had him in Vegas. But Mike's he's battered and bruised. It's been an issue with him throughout his career, all the way back to Clemson with I think it was the spinal injury, back neck injury that he had throughout his career with the Chargers, just consistent injuries. Going into this season with the Jets, coming back off of his injury from last season, just not 100% there. So why trade for him and run the same risk of having him be injured the same way that you're dealing with guys right now being on the injury list? So you want someone who's got, when we're talking about availability, that's something that's important right now. You want a guy that can produce, and I get where you're getting at. You want a bigger body receiver, someone that can be more physical and maybe win some of these one-on-ones, but more importantly, they have to be able to be on the field to make a difference.
Mike Williams was a Charger at one point. They could have just kept him as a Charger if they really wanted him to be a Charger. So to give him away, basically, and then bring him back, it doesn't make any sense. And does Mike Williams propel this offense into a deep playoff run? I don't think so. This barely moves the needle for me at all. And does he make the group better on paper? Sure, but he is not who he used to be, and he's also still not it says he's not a number one. So it's not like the guys that got traded today. He's not a Devontae Adams. He's not an Amari Cooper. They don't need another wide receiver 3. They've got a bunch of them on the roster.
He's currently the Jets' 4th wide receiver, and the Jets have lost 3 games in a row and are quickly falling out of the playoff hunt.
Yeah,
so,
the ghost of Alan Lazard is outperforming Mike Williams.
What are we talking about here?
All right. Next up. By the way, what we didn't mention, and because we just did offense defense, shout out to J.K. Scott getting 2 punts inside the 5-yard line on Sunday. That was beautiful. I don't know if it's because he's back at home in Denver, but that was great.
We'll focus on the 2 punts inside the 5-yard line and not the shank in the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
Don't worry about that one. I'm talking about.
I don't even want to throw shade and say one was inside the 5, the other was just inside the 10. But we'll give them 2 inside.
No, I think one was a 5 and one was at the 3. I'm pretty sure. I don't know. Anyway, all right, I'll look it up. All right, I'll look it up while we're answering this one from the Korean American, which is his name, not just a thing I said about this guy's picture. His name is the Korean American. Thoughts on Harbaugh's health, and if you guys think he's here for the long term. What did you guys feel about him going in the tent?
I mean, it sounds like it's something he's been dealing with for a while, and he was back on the sideline almost immediately. So I'm not too worried about it. I think he's here for the long haul. I think it's a non-issue.
Yeah, I mean, it was scary to see it happen. And of course, the older you get, the more concerning these things are. So to hear that he was dealing with this, I mean, way back in, 2012 was the last time he dealt with this specifically when he was with the Niners. So I don't think anyone had ever heard that he was dealing with this ever. Not that I'm aware of. So I'm not overly concerned right now, but it would just be the Chargers' luck to have something bogus like this go on. But look, I'm going to keep the good vibes going, but long term I'm not super concerned. I just want him to be healthy. That's all I care about.
1 punt was at the 5, 1 was at the 4. I was right.
Oh, sorry, JK, man.
Give him his flowers.
Me over here hating on you, dude. You did great.
Yeah, I'm not I was a little concerned when I first saw him go in the blue tent because that feels serious for a coach. But then, when he came out and just said it's a thing that he's been dealing with, we got it. Wasn't that big of a deal. All right. From Casey, what are your thoughts on the Eli Apple signing, fellas?
They need a warm body at corner, so they found one.
He's on the practice squad.
Yeah, I'd love for him to stay there, but just kind of based on how things are happening, I wouldn't be surprised if he has to get called up. I really don't like Eli Apple. I'm sorry.
I don't either.
As a player, to talk the type of trash that he does, he gets toasted way too often, and those are the worst guys. Like, he'll make a play, he'll let you hear about it for like the next 2 years, but he will completely ignore the fact that he gets burned to a crisp every other one. So I don't know. I mean, it's unfortunate that the Chargers are dealing with these issues at corner. I hope he never has to see the field, but just have this sneaking suspicion that it's not going to be very long before he does.
Yeah, we'll see. It feels like Zont's on his way back soon. Hopefully Fulton's not too soonish.
Didn't they just?
Zont's on 3. He got 3 more weeks. He's on IR. So,
but I mean,
so they've got to hold it together for the next 3 weeks. That's my concern.
Yes. Yeah,
and then we don't know what's up with Fulton. So
yeah. Well, all right. Next from Connor. At what point do we entertain Joey Bosa trades?
Last year.
Oh, is that far back? Huh? Feels like it goes even further, but okay.
I mean, I think with the new front office, I think they'll consider anything that comes their way. They'll at least entertain it. But we just talked about the pass rush not getting home and struggling to finish. So I'm sure they're going to be thrilled to have him back because Joey was playing some pretty damn good football before he got hurt. So they might have to limit his snaps, but I would say the chances of them trading him in season, just based on the way things are going with the pass rush, are pretty slim.
Jamie, how many times do you think we've said that at this point? He's playing really good football until he got hurt. If you had to count, how many times do you think those words have come out of your mouth?
Every year for the last 7 or 8 years.
So it's frustrating to this point because the production is there when he's on the field. The issue is just him not being on the field. And I get it. I mean, it's hard to deal a pass rusher when right now you seem to maybe be struggling to get to the QB consistently. So, I mean, what are you saying here? Not you specifically, but just in general. You get a few more solid games for him. Maybe he can play another 7 or 8 for the remainder of the season. And if he produces, is that enough to warrant keeping him around? I mean, I guess in a rotation, but ultimately, I mean, after this season, I can't imagine that he'd be back. So Should you just go ahead and try to get something for him now? And I guess the next question would be, what could you get for him at this point?
I mean, like I said, it's worth listening to if the offer is right. I think last year they were offered Garrett, a fourth for him, and it wasn't enough. I don't know how the current front office values him at this point, but I think, if you can get him back and find a way to keep him relatively healthy and on the field, even if it's in a slightly reduced role, if you're looking at him getting, I don't know, 6-8 sacks over the course of the next 12 games, potentially, I would say that's more valuable than trading him for like a 6th or 7th round pick.
It just sucks that it feels like they're going to have to work to keep him on the field. Like you're basically going to have to work around the injury bug somehow, some way.
Yeah, I think he was playing better football early this year before he got hurt than he has for the last couple of years, particularly against the run. He just seemed way more disciplined, way more motivated. He was playing some really damn good football. And I think they need that. So I think it's hard to trade him considering the lack of production from the edge room right now.
Yeah. And now with more injuries on top of it, it feels like his value is starting to drop a little bit too. From Spiked DWK, is it possible Cam Hart played so well because Jesse Minter was covering for him, or does the film show he played that well? He did not get covered for.
No, he was on an island against Sutton pretty much the whole game. He tackled well. He covered well. He, outside of when he popped in certain situations against the run, he blended into the defense. He didn't stand out in the best possible way.
Yep.
Took the words right out of my mouth. There were times I forgot he was on the field.
Yeah,
I forgot
exactly.
I forgot he was there. I didn't even notice it. And the fact that they were afraid to target, like Bo Nix didn't even want to try him. So, I mean, again, Bo Nix isn't an elite quarterback. He's a rookie, but it says a lot. When your best wide receiving option is being covered by a 5th round rookie and you won't even look that way, tells you all you need to know.
SBF Fishing, thanks for the donation. I will be at the Cardinals game Monday night with my daughter for her first game. Congratulations. Chargers D, is the Chargers D going to shut down Kyler, or will he run/scramble all over us? I kind of talked about it earlier. Kind of feel like the one thing that they're going to try and limit is him running and scrambling. That's how every team's beaten the Cardinals so far.
Keep him in the pocket, make him make decisions with the football.
Yep.
Make him have to, I guess, pigeon or
defense.
crow hop to see over the offensive lineman in front of him, because it's about the only way he's getting anything over, especially in the middle of the field. So yeah, just keep him boxed in. It's not the easiest of tasks, but if you're being disciplined in your rush lanes, not fighting to get up the field too far, allowing those openings for him to escape, you should be in good shape. You essentially just have to create a box around him. And it's still kind of hard to find a little joker amongst like all the tall trees. So he'll probably maneuver on the interior and make a couple plays here and there, but more often than not, they should be able to keep him corralled if they just play disciplined in their rush lanes. That has to be a point of emphasis this week.
Any practice squad players you guys are hoping to see that can help the team now?
Practice squad guys?
Nope.
Tucker Fisk? No, nobody. Okay, all right.
Hey, give me Fisk over Tomlinson.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so yeah, I'll take that.
Okay. No Alex Leatherwood. Nobody's wants to claim him.
I forgot he was around.
You guys don't want to claim him?
No.
No. Okay. Thoughts on DJ Chark? What's going on? Where's he at?
He's a ghost. He's taken on what's that kid's name? The Webb kid that was invisible.
Mark Webb. Milk carton Mark.
He's in Mark Webb status.
What is going on? Who knows? There are no thoughts. We don't know where he is. Thoughts on Jesse Minter going soft in the fourth quarter, considering the reaction of how it made it way too close for Denver than it needed to be.
I get it. I mean, they were shutting Knicks down, and the Broncos were not moving the ball at all in the first half. They made the decision that the Broncos were not going to be able to move the football, and really, outside of a couple busted plays, they really didn't. So, I'm I don't have a problem with it. I think second guessing it now is hindsight. They won the game. All they really had to do was stop the Broncos for like 4 or 5 possessions in the second half. And for the most part, they did that. So could they have been more aggressive? I guess. But that's how the NFL works. You get a 23-point lead in the first half against a team that's not moving the football, and you're probably going to be conservative and try to keep the ball in front of you.
Well, it's twofold. The defense was gassed from chasing Knicks around, but also they spent more time on the field in the second half because the offense wasn't producing. So some of that has to do with, again, not playing the most disciplined football in the second half. Also, again, I mentioned Tarheeb still playing on the outside, which is not a natural position for him also. So there was some issues with coverage. But, I mean, I understand holding on to the lead. My only issue is that there still has to be complementary football. You can't ask your defense to consistently go out there every week and win you games. You have to hold up your end of the bargain. You can't just show up for 2 quarters.
All right, let's go to our last one here. Yeah, and I'm not concerned. We kind of touched on it a little bit earlier. Last one here from Blazing Bolts. Thank you for the donation. Thoughts on the current state of the AFC West? We got the 5-0 Chiefs, 3-2 Chargers, 3-3 Broncos, and 2-4 Raiders.
I mean, there's not a whole lot of surprises here, right? We figured it was the Chiefs and everybody else. I guess the only real surprise is the Broncos somehow managing to win 3 straight after losing their first 2 games. But I mean, the Raiders are a disappointment. They look like they're a disaster, which I'm enjoying because I like seeing Antonio Pierce struggle after what he did to ASU. Fuck that guy.
Nothing about Telesco. Pierce is the one that's really stuck in your craw, huh?
That too, Telesco too, all of them. But I really dislike Pierce. The fact that he did what he did to ASU and landed with a cush NFL head coaching job just drives me crazy. But yeah, I mean, I think the Broncos and the Raiders are going to fall off. I mean, now with the Raiders losing Adams, that offense is going to have a really hard time moving the football. I think they've transitioned from Gardner Minshew now to O'Connell.
Yep.
Which is only going to make things worse. So yeah, I think the Chargers are making a run for second place as long as they don't have any big hiccups. And I think the Raiders and the Broncos are going to be battling it out for third place. This is kind of what we expected for the AFC West going into the season.
Yeah, I think it's ultimately playing out the way that we all thought it would. I'm relishing in like the fact that I said that the Raiders were going to lose Devontae Adams before the trade deadline. It was so easy to see that coming. And yeah, them failing makes me very, very happy because the Raiders are terrible and I don't like anything about them at all. And it's going to be the way it is until the end of eternity. So good on them for sucking. But overall, yeah, the Chargers just have to hold down the fort. And here's the thing, though. The only concern that I have is if this team claims to be the storm, they can't just essentially be weathering it by waiting on guys to come back on the mend. I think they need to make some moves here and there. I believe Joe Ortiz will do that, and they will stand on that rallying cry. But for the time being, I think they're in a pretty decent spot. Just have to stay consistent and not just allow guys to come back from injuries and expect them to play well and boost the team overall and their play on the field, but go out and get some difference makers, help your quarterback out. It's going to mean a lot come the end of the season.
Okay, then let me ask you guys, since we're talking on it. And also, yes, I mean, we talked about the Chiefs were going to be probably the 1 seed in the AFC. They were going to win the division, and the Chargers are going to be fighting for a wild card spot. So that's not a surprise. And they'll figure out Bo Nix. It's starting to come together that way anyway. And the Raiders are just going to bottom out here because they're in fire sale mode and probably just both of them hoping to get high draft picks pretty soon here. There's not really much more to play for, though 3-3 isn't a give up on the season type, but Bo Nix will make it that way pretty soon here when they keep losing more games. But if you guys are talking about Ortiz making a move, what is the position you're like? What's number 1? You mentioned tight end, Jamie. Is that the one you're
I think there are 3 positions that they need to be focused on. I would say tight end, corner, and to a lesser extent, wide receiver. But they definitely need a tight end. They need somebody who can help move the chains at tight end, own the middle of the field, make some plays. And they need depth at corner, obviously. So I think those are the 2 big priorities right now.
Yep, pretty much in that same order. I've got tight end up first. Cornerback may be something that they have to look into just by way of attrition, and then wide receiver, maybe a tie there. But definitely for me, tight end first and foremost. They need to give Justin Herbert a consistent option in the passing game who can make a difference down the middle of the field, be a safety valve, someone that they can utilize in the red zone. Right now, they don't have a big enough body or someone that's enough of a playmaker consistently to take on that role right now. So my option number one would be for tight end.
And this isn't bad from Sergio, who might be in the Discord. Greg Newsome, I'm not talking about the draft capital for it, but if you're talking about corner, Brown's probably going to be in fire sale mode pretty soon here too. Watson is absolutely terrible, and if they're going to start selling off pieces, Greg Newsome wouldn't be bad. And I know Njoku is somebody that's been mentioned in the chat a lot too, so that's a team to definitely target. But tight end being a big one. I mentioned Ben Cleveland on another podcast, just talking about interior offensive line that might be able to help out. But yeah, we've mentioned Hunter Henry. We talked about Njoku. Maybe Austin Hooper was a name Jamie mentioned.
I threw Dawson Knox out there also.
Dawson
I've got a couple other potential names for you too.
All right.
One that we've mentioned on this podcast before during draft time. That's Charlie Kolar from the Ravens. I think
give us any of those.
Yeah, seriously.
Damn tight ends. Stop hoarding all of them.
Kolar's a former third or fourth round pick. He's not going to cost a whole lot in terms of cap space. I think he's got one more year left on his rookie contract. So that's an option there for a cheap guy who can come in and make some plays in the passing game. I was also thinking potentially Evan Ingram from the Jags, a guy who has a $7 million cap number this year. I think it's considerably higher next year, but I think you can cut him and save like $12 or $13 million. Mm-hmm. So he's a guy who I think really changes the dynamic of the tight end room this year if you can trade for him, and the Jags are seriously falling apart. Yeah. So their season's going nowhere. I don't know if they'd be willing to trade him, but it's certainly worth a phone call.
I think both he and Njoku's cap number is about the same next year. So quick question, of the two, who would you rather?
Give me the two names.
Evan Ingram and David Njoku.
Oh, Njoku.
I think I might go with Ingram, to be honest with you. Njoku's been so up and down, and Ingram just seems like he's pretty steady as a receiver. I
would like either. I do want to say I do like both, but I'm leaning Njoku. I hear Ingram.
Yeah, my Miami bias is going to lean me towards Njoku. Sorry.
What do we think about Noah Fant? Seahawks start selling off.
I mean, I don't think they have a reason to right now, but as far as a receiving option goes, I feel like he's just never really met his potential to this point. I mean, he could have always improved. I think he's still relatively young, so I wouldn't necessarily hate it. I just can't see them trading him.
Yeah. Well, just, 3-3. They're still, I think the 49ers are 3-3 too. So they're still in it, but just another name if Seahawks start going down. Not a guy that's long-term. I don't even know if it's worth it, but just a name. And then, God, there's somebody else we were talking about. After the Panthers game, we mentioned J.C. Horn. If Panthers are starting to sell off some guys. I know he's a rookie and he's good and all that, but
that was my favorite corner in that class.
I know, me
even
too.
with Patrick Surtain. Well, Surtain is definitely the better of the two, but Horn was dealing with injury issues in his young career, so I'm sure that's played a huge part in it. But I still would love to have J.C. Horn if they were looking to get rid of him.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't argue with bringing in a good corner. That would be a huge help. So
yeah, and he only has one more year, I think,
on his rookie deal.
And he's unhappy there. So if he decides to push himself out, anyway. All right, cool. We got some trade talk in. All right, thanks everybody for joining us. We appreciate it. Gave you some names, broke down after hours. Thanks for joining us here late on a Tuesday night. We will see you next time.
Thanks, everybody.
Salute.